Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Society of Germantown's live streamed worship service. Today, we are glad to welcome members and friends of the Media UU Church, the UUCDC, who so kindly hosted us 2 Sundays ago. Their presence in our virtual sanctuary makes this a very special Sunday service. My name is Tom Ott, and I will be the worship associate this morning. Our amazing minister, Kent Matthias, will be in the pulpit. Our tech wizards are Treva Berger, Avery Hamill, Scott Smith, Yachi So, Carolyn Scott, and Celeste Lamb. Music today will be provided by our music director, Mark Doherty, with a special virtual appearance of the USG choir and singers whose names will appear in chat. Before we begin our service, I have a few brief announcements. Visitors and return guests, we are glad to see you, as well as regular members and friends. Please see emails, links in the chat section of Zoom, in your newsletters, and on the church's websites. Please make sure your display name in Zoom is respectful and accurately reflects your identity. If you don't know how to rename yourself, please call 215-844-1157. We're glad you were here and want to know who you are. If you or someone you know is experiencing hardships, please reach out to us. Contact any staff member or our caring team. Remember to look in the chat for the links for these upcoming programs. For our children and youth, the service will include a story for all ages. We also offer Minecraft Elementary Edition at 3 p.m. To register or get links, please contact Ryan Hurd. And look in your inbox this week for information for how to obtain a new CSD treasure packet for next weekend. For adults, after the service today, save your Seder seat. RSVP to join next Saturday's 5 p.m. virtual celebration of Passover. At 11:45 today, you can join the Humanist group Push by contacting the email in your chat. At 5 p.m. today, you can attend a mindfulness breath session. And on Tuesday evening, join Jesse Frechette for a 4-evening introduction to mindfulness program. Wednesday morning, between 9 and 11, you can drop off non-perishable food items in the USG courtyard. This coming Thursday morning, pull on your gardening gloves and join Mike Rogers on the USG grounds to do some spring cleanup. Mike had no helpers last Thursday and thus no one to laugh at his jokes. Finally, donate to the first ever virtual auction. Our goal is to raise $10,000 to fund the streaming equipment in the sanctuary for hybrid services. We have even more announcements and events and programs, so please check your email and the website at your leisure. It is now my pleasure to introduce the senior minister of the UUCDC, the Reverend Peter Friedrichs. Friedrichs, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It is a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It is one of the silver linings of what's been happening this past year that we can get our congregations together virtually as we are. It was great to have folks from USG worship with us 2 weeks ago, and I see so many familiar faces here this morning worshiping with USG. And I want to extend my gratitude to Kent, Reverend Kent Matthias, and to Latifa Griffin and all of the staff and members of USG for hosting us today. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a virtual coffee hour after the service. And I hope that USG members will, UUCDC members will feel free to stick around and get to know some of their counterparts from the Germantown Church. I have just one very brief announcement to add to those that Tom listed. This is for the UUCDC folks, and that is that our fund drive will end next Sunday. So if you've not made your pledge yet, we would encourage you this week to make your pledge sometime and get that into us so that we can count you among the final numbers. And there are more announcements that you can find in our Sunday supplement, which we call What's Happening, and that's on our website. So go to uucdc.org and check out what's happening. Now let us turn our attention to the here and now as we begin our worship service.
Good morning and welcome to our worship service this morning. We are happy to welcome UUCDC congregation along with visitors and friends. I'm Latifah Griffin, I'm the intern minister here, and I have our opening words and chalice lighting. So let's settle in as we light our chalice with a reading by Reverend Charles Bidwell called Lighting. We gather in the light of a new day. We gather as those born into light and yet ever seeking it. We come into places like this and times like this in order that we might find light within ourselves, light in one another, be renewed in our commitment to see light in everyone. We come to this time and place to seek light in ancient stories, in contemporary wisdom, in words we speak, in words we sing. We come in search of light. We need to live truly and faithfully. We take this time to bring ourselves to this moment, to this time, and to this place. Quieting our spirits, centering our minds, and opening our hearts. Blessed be.
Good morning. I'm Ryan Hurd. I'm the Director of Spiritual Development here at the Unitarian Society of Germantown. And today I'm going to tell a story about Olympia Brown, who is one of our UU heroes. So I especially welcome all children to listen to this story. You can just scooch right up here to the front of the Zoom. So imagine, if you will, a farm wagon bumping along through the Kansas prairie under a hot, blazing hot August sun. And hold on, let's get into the mood a little bit more. Okay, now we're in the mood. So next to the wagon's driver sits a young woman in a long black dress. And as her eyes sweep out over the prairie, Olympia Brown has a lot of time to gather her thoughts because it's a long way to the next town where folks will come to hear her speak. She only met the driver the day before, and the road that they're traveling on isn't really a road, it's more of a muddy trail. But as they make their way through this sea of tall grass, there's no hint of a town or a village ahead. It's been a month of travel, of similar days. And so Olympia has faith that they will indeed reach a town where people will gather to hear her speak. And she has faith that someone will provide her a meal and a place to sleep, even if it's no more than a rough mattress on the floor. And she had faith that someone will transport her to the town where she's scheduled to speak the following day. But her travels in Kansas turned out not to be at all what she had expected. So how had her universalist faith brought her to this unlikely place? Let's rewind. I'm going to make some rewind sounds. So before she left for this odyssey, this horse-pulled odyssey, Olympia Brown was the minister of a Universalist church in Weymouth Landing in Massachusetts. She struggled long and hard to become an ordained minister, and in fact was the first minister ordained as a woman by denomination in the United States. But in 1867, two leaders for the fight of women's rights, Lucy Stone and her husband, Henry Blackwell, persuaded Olympia to go to Kansas to campaign to change the Kansas Constitution, to add an amendment that would give women the right to vote, because at this point, only white men were allowed to vote. So another amendment on the ballot would also give Black men the right to vote. And if both passed, Kansas would be the first state to grant universal suffrage, which is the right of all adult citizens, Black, white, women, and men to vote. It was Olympia's universalist faith that ignited her passion to give women this right to vote. Her faith called her to ask, if everyone is equal under the eyes of God, why then can't everyone vote? So Olympia had been told that everything had been arranged for her once she got to Kansas: the speaking arrangements, places to stay, get a good night's sleep, food, a traveling companion, and a driver. But when she got to Kansas, she found, yeah, she had those speaking arrangements, but no companion, no lodgings, no driver. Because it turns out that the political party that invited her all the way to Kansas had decided not to support the women's suffrage amendment after all. They left her high and dry. Olympia probably felt alone and scared in that moment, wouldn't you? To be in a strange new place, far from home, with no friends or support. So fortunately for Reverend Olympia Brown, the people of Kansas were generous and helpful. And for 4 months, she followed a schedule that most people would think would be impossible. Against all odds, she attracted large audiences of people in towns throughout the state. Still, when it came time to vote, the men of Kansas defeated the amendment. They actually defeated both amendments. So Black men and women were not given the right to vote in Kansas. Olympia took this defeat hard. But Susan B. Anthony, the leading women suffrage leader, wrote her an uplifting letter. Y'all know Susan B. Anthony. I actually have a shiny coin here. with Susan B. Anthony on it. I really like shiny things. I'm a bit like Jeremy the Crow in that way. This is what Susan B. Anthony said. She said, "Never was defeat so glorious of victory. We shall win because the day breaks." So perhaps at this moment, Olympia leaned back into her faith and reminded herself that all people are worthy of love and respect in the eyes of God. And that's the way that the Universalist language was at that time. And to make this world a heaven on earth, she knew she had to keep going. So Olympia Brown continued her work as a minister, first in the city of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and then in Racine, Wisconsin. In 1884, she became president of the Women's Wisconsin Suffrage Association. And a couple of years later, she resigned her ministry to work full-time on women's rights. Or maybe we could say that her ministry now was working for women's rights. Years later, 1917, the United States entered the war known as World War I, and President Woodrow Wilson called it the war that would make the world safe for democracy. Women still didn't have the vote. And when campaigning for it, they were told they should not oppose the president while the country was at war. We hear that logic a lot, actually, don't we? Which is interesting. So the US has been continuously at war now for 226 years out of the 244 years we've been a nation, 93% of the time. I digress. President Wilson went to France at the end of the war, and then the Women's Party staged a demonstration in front of a fire. A frail 83-year-old woman, tiny, but full of energy, stepped up to the flames to burn a copy of President Wilson's speech. Olympia Brown said, "America has fought for France and the common cause of liberty. I fought for liberty for 70 years, and I protest against the president's leaving this country and this old fight here unwon." And the crowd burst into applause and to cheers. And when President Wilson returned, he finally gave his support to women's suffrage, and Congress passed the 19th Amendment. On Election Day morning, November 2nd, 1920, Olympia Brown made her way to the polling station, and she was the first to vote. It was 53 years since she had campaigned in Kansas, and she had won the right to vote at last. So I chose this story today because I really wanted to show off my shiny Susan B. Anthony dollar. No, actually, I really chose it because Olympia Brown's life is a powerful, powerful example of how our UU faith can focus our lives and our work for a better world, a world where all people are treated with dignity and respect. So as I often do, I leave you with these wondering questions to ponder as this next week flows by. I wonder if we can notice when we're discouraged this week or feeling alone or unsupported in our work for something that's important. Can we take a moment to take a breath to acknowledge our frustration, our loneliness, and then lean in to our faith? What does that look like for you? This good work, my friends, is our shared ministry. Blessed be.
Thank you, Ryan. That's very uplifting. This church and congregation are places of love, giving, and action, where we work together to make the world a better place. For this morning's offering, please be as generous as you can, and here is how you do it. You can text donations to any amount to 215-608-2660. For example, 20 space COVID sends $20 to USG's COVID relief fund. 20 space pledge applies $20 to your annual USG pledge. 20 space Sun, SUN, sends $20 to the General Sunday Plate. You may also give to USG online at usguu.org/give, or send a check to the USG office with recipient noted in the memo.
For everyone born, a place has been taken.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Our reading this morning is from Conflagration: How the Transcendentalists Sparked the American Struggle for Racial, Gender, and Social Justice by John Buchrans. Many of us first meet the Transcendentalists in literature classes in high school or college. This gives us the impression that we should think of them primarily as writers. We read some Emerson, a few poems and essays, probably including Self-Reliance. Thoreau's Walden, about going into the woods to live more deliberately, is now the most read American book written before the Civil War. History provides another perspective, focused less on their writings than on their lives and deeds. Many Transcendentalists and their followers were fervent activists, sparking the intellectual, spiritual, moral, and political struggle in America for racial, gender, social, and environmental justice. That continues today. They were also far more religious and urban than most people realize. This is because history has a tendency to erase many lives and the places associated with them. Here, we will lift up less well-known Transcendentalists who were courageous in challenging tradition and injustice. Rather than being pushed around by history, they were great souls who instead tried to shape it toward a more just and hopeful future.
Good morning again. It is now time for our concerns of the community and world, and our prayer and meditation. So this morning we are sending love to Jennifer Bellett and Marissa Myers, who welcomed baby Justice Zachary Myers on March 21st at 4:05 p.m. The baby weighed in at 7 pounds and 3.5 ounces. His mother's report that he has hair to spare. And also welcoming baby Justice, our siblings, Isabella, Leor, and Sage. So welcome baby Justice. Also, we send a well-deserved congratulations to Carolyn Cotton, whose artistic talents were on display during the Beauty Bound service last Sunday. I hope you all were able to check it out. She gave a presentation of her impressive paintings during the last Elderhood meeting. So Carolyn Cotton, congratulations. Our hearts are with Ben Mames, whose mother, Angiolina Mames, lost my part here, has passed away at the age of 96. She was a teenager in World War II when her village in Italy was bombed. She is remembered for her incredible ability to recite poetry from her childhood and her legendary Sunday dinners, which will be imitated but never replicated. She was surrounded by family and friends all week before she passed. Our hearts are also with John and Ann Prawn, who mourned the sudden death of John's niece, Zoe Prawn. Zoe was the daughter of John's younger brother, Jim, and his wife, Jeanette Prawn. Zoe died on March 23rd at the age of 38. Our hearts are also with Jen Levy and family, whose grandfather, Chet Montgomery, passed away on March 10th. He was 94, and he lived a long life of love, laughter, and ice cream. Our hearts are also with Tom Smith, who is in Penn Presbyterian Hospital again, recovering from a cranial bleed. We wrap our arms around Tom and his wife, Susan, in this challenging, worrisome time. Also, thank you for your thoughts and prayers for my son, Spencer, who had to spend the day in the hospital on Wednesday, March 21st, but he's home now. He has a seizure disorder, and so sometimes it can get a little rough. But I appreciate your thoughts and prayers and well wishes. Also, an update on the Schoonmakers, Tom and Ann. Tom continues to improve in the Mather House, the rehab facility attached to the Hills at White Marsh, where he and Ann resides. Visiting is now allowed to both Tom and Ann, but you need to make a reservation, so I'm sure they would appreciate some visits. All right, in other joyous news, last night, many people around the world celebrated Passover. Passover commemorates the biblical story of Exodus, where God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. How applicable is that now? It is also a joy to be celebrating this worship service with the UUCDC congregation this morning. So that's also a joy. All right, so some concerns here. Our thoughts are also with the citizens of Georgia who are victims of voter suppression laws in 2020. It's just unheard of that is happening. Also, this past week on American soil in 2021, we experienced 2 mass shootings that killed a total of 18 people. These horrific events serve as a daily reminder of the necessity of our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Reverence and respect for human nature is violated each time we experience something of this magnitude. So before we move forward with our time of prayer and silent meditation, I ask that you keep both the suspects and the victims in your thoughts and prayers this coming week. Now, let us take a moment to share and witness each other's life and greatness. May we honor the opportunity to share in the inherent worth and dignity of each other's lives, knowledge, and compassion. Help us to deepen our understanding of family, that we may perceive the hidden hurts, encourage the neglected gifts, and answer the silent cries. Widen our understanding of family, that we may support the powerless stranger, recognizing our struggling neighbor, and identify the lonely newcomer. Heighten our understanding of family, that your light may disperse our darkness. For this is a moment of deep concern that requires comfort and a practice of peace and compassion to comfort our sorrows. Let us see in this moment that we are enough, and that we are in this together. There is nothing that we cannot do if we work together for the good in each other. Let us be all that we need in this moment. Ashe and amen.
March Madness has nothing on us because people, we have March Magic right here. How joyous. I'm thrilled that twice this month our 2 congregations come together for the sacred act of worship. We get to celebrate with you the birth of baby Justice. We get to get a little time marker. I want everybody to see right now, Ryan and I are in a grow out our hair COVID time contest. He is way ahead of me, but just wait, We'll get both churches back together later. This collaboration allows us something we crave so deeply, to share about some of the ways our faith tradition means so much to us. As we know, some folks are not big fans of religion. George Carlin said, the problem with religion is that it has convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky. who watches everything you do. And the invisible man has a list of 10 specific things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of those things, he will send you to a place of burning and fire for a very long time. But the invisible man up in the sky loves you. He loves you, and he needs your money. Carlin's comments to some are funny, maybe sad, and true in describing some religions and theologies. Carlin's comments make me think of a regular piece of training in Unitarian Universalist Seminary when somebody says, I'm not sure that I can belong to a church because I need to tell you, I do not believe in God. A good option for a response is to ask, would you be willing to tell me about the God that you do not believe in? It's probable that I don't believe in that kind of God either. We can say that UU theology does not profess belief in a strict punishing God. And whether one believes in God or not, we often fall short, stopping at the point of declaring only what we do not believe in. In such dialogue, we have an opening to talk about what we do believe in, including powerful salvational love. The agape kind of love that brings us to care deeply and feel deeply connected to others. This is the kind of love that empowers us to sacrifice with and for the well-being of all. We can explain that in Covenant, we Unitarian Universalists dedicate ourselves to living out our principles and purposes. When we do reflect upon and articulate our theology, we can save lives. Here is a true story demonstrating damaging and salvific powers of religion. A young African-American single mother of 3 is going through intensely difficult times. She's barely able to make ends meet and pay the basic bills, and the father of her children becomes enraged when they get into relationship conflicts. He assaults the woman, throwing acid into her face. The woman is disabled and disfigured by the attack. Not knowing where to turn, the woman seeks solace by going to her family Christian church, where she receives the message that God does everything for a reason. Demoralized by the implication that God endorsed the violence against her, the woman sinks into despair. Eventually, the woman goes to a Unitarian Universalist church where she hears a liberating theology of God's infinite, redeeming love. The minister clarifies that nobody deserves abuse and nobody should ever have to tolerate violence. The woman receives pastoral care, immerses herself in some congregational programs. And to this day, the woman says that Unitarian Universalist church and theology saved her from dying of a broken heart. I identify with this story. I have never been attacked or abused, but I have been so deeply depressed that I pondered why I was not suicidal. I felt like I was hanging on by a fingernail. In my alcoholic bottom, I walked into the doors of the Unitarian Universalist Church in my college town of Appleton, Wisconsin. Oh yeah, I walked right in the doors, don't you know? I walked right, right in the doors, don't you know? And after sitting through worship service, it took me to summon every ounce of courage that I have to hang around during fellowship hour and drink a cup of coffee. And then simply chatting with folks helped me to feel like I was standing on safe ground again, no longer in free fall. Getting sober and coming back to UU Church, the faith of my entire life, felt like being born again. It really did. Unitarian Universalist liberating theology taught me that even in the middle of injurious slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, there could be more celebration of life ahead of me in my life. I started to find that I could laugh again. I had lost my ability to laugh with my whole body. UU liberating theology empowered me to use the experiences from my suffering to be more effective in helping others. UU liberating theology saved me from dying of a broken heart. How about you? Has Unitarian Universalist theology helped or saved you? Winding the Circle is a UU program on institutional change, guiding congregations to be better focused and equipped for ministries of inclusivity and anti-oppression. At USG, we have a strong leadership team engaging the program, and our current focus is theology, which we can broadly interpret as the study of religious faith, practice, and experience. Theology involves articulating beliefs about what we hold to be true and important, and articulating commitments about how we will live. We're asking how we can respond to the call of the times, requiring a liberating faith that invites us each into the spiritual work of empathy and healing, and provides a basis for our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're reclaiming sacred parts of our history, including Unitarian transcendentalists like Elizabeth Peabody, who proclaimed quite radically in the 1840s that all people, including women, could speak out about whatever truth may by God's grace be shown to her. And then the religious community can create a place to invite everybody to listen for God's grace to speak to them with clarity and inspiration. Elizabeth Peabody declared that the mission of the church was to liberalize and spiritualize all forms of worship and life. Peabody used the word liberalize. I believe that we can assume today she would also use the word liberate. Peabody believed that without liberating the people in their ways of living, the church becomes worse than nothing. Living out her theology, Peabody opened the first English-speaking kindergarten in the USA and was a pioneer in the pedagogy of play. The pedagogy of play needed by people of all ages. I testify in my life. Believing that revelation is continuous and comes from many sources, in 1844, Elizabeth Peabody was the first person to translate the Buddhist Lotus Sutra into English. What a wonderful gift that was. Peabody labored amongst many Unitarian transcendentalists, working with many abolitionists, including top leaders such as John Brown and Frederick Douglass, living out a liberating theology. They helped to spark a worldwide spiritual conflagration which ended legal slavery. These are our theological roots, celebrating that all people are part of the universal oversoul. All people are part of God. All people deserve freedom and equality. Nobody deserves or should have to suffer abuse. This we believe. To this, we dedicate our lives. At this time, 2021 going forward, facing all the tenacious troubles and outstanding opportunities, we are called to proclaim the liberating UU theology of our history, present, and future. The church must play a critical role in helping to liberate the people in all ways of living. The church must help to create disciples of love that transform lives. Unitarians and Universalists like Elizabeth Peabody and Olympia Brown were dedicated to living out their theology, and in doing so, transforming society for freedom, peace, and justice. Putting their faith into action, they followed St. James, who said, "Faith without works is dead. If faith is just talk and no action, it's not worth much." And it is also true as we reflect upon the work of folks like Peabody and Brown, that a faith professing you can believe anything you want risks impotence. How would they have energized the base to work for change if their theology was simply a free-for-all? Have a meeting emphasizing, listen, everybody here can believe anything they want. And with that powerful bond amongst us, let's go fight the evil empire of slavery and mobilize the nation to achieve the right to vote for all people. I do not think that would have accomplished much. If we want a movement of liberation and empowerment, a faith with a core message and principle beats anything goes any day. Much of the conflagration of women's rights and racial justice was happening at the same time as Charles Darwin was promoting theories of evolution and natural selection. At that time, many Unitarian leaders were announcing with astonishment, Darwin has established the fact that all of nature is miracle. And as part of nature, human beings are miracles as well. And they preached, we can evolve. We can evolve, and we must evolve intellectually, religiously, and ethically. To this day, to the here and now, this theological good news professes that with beloved community, we can evolve. We must evolve, and we can, into more fully realized individuals and communities. We in our churches need to hold ourselves accountable in the sacred covenant of liberating people in all ways of living. It's tax season, people, and nobody gets an exemption on this one. No exemption for participating in the liberation movement because you started too late, or you're already done, or you or your group have arrived. Of course not. None of our children will outlive the need for this work. Here and now, in our times, we can live our lives based in sacred truths such as revelation is continuous and comes from many and varied forms. Suffering is ubiquitous, and oppression is tenacious. And the human spirit, connected with the spirit of life, is remarkably resilient, working for freedom and justice. And without liberating the people in their ways of living, the church becomes worse than nothing. We have to hold in our mind, who will be the next person to come into the doors of one of our congregations needing a spiritual message that can change their lives? Who is already here among us that is not getting their needs met, that needs a spiritual message or a change in the way we do things? Oftentimes, historically, for UUs, that's marginalized folks that we have not done great. And we, including today, we need to keep going. Dr. Elias Ortega, the president of Meadville Lombard Theological School, writes, if we believe in collective salvation, we must also believe in collective sacrifice. Reclaiming this sacred practice means there cannot be small groups of UUs whose personal sacrifice we depend on every time to move us forward as a collective whole. Collective salvation requires an affirmation of the power of we to grow a faith that nourishes all. Amen. This is tough work. If this was easy, I absolutely believe way more people would be doing it or would already have done it. This work involves comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. This work means creating spaces where everybody can listen to their soul and speak out and live out their truth found there within, and we can learn from each other to keep going. In faithful community, we're held accountable. We are given grace. We are empowered to love, sing, dance, and laugh, and to bend the arc of the universe towards justice. This we believe, to this we dedicate our lives. Blessings be. Amen. Let us sing. Let's get down with this hymn, people. Thanks again for being with us this morning, UUCD family. We love you very much. These closing words from one of the best and the brightest UU ministers I've ever known, Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice and love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? The choice to bless the world is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement in the middle of a broken world. It is an acknowledgement of beauty, grace, and mystery abiding. There is an embrace of kindness encompassing all life, even yours. Choose to bless the world.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide.
No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide.
Wow, what a remarkable service. As we now return to our daily lives, let us please pass the virtual peace and blessings to you in the coming week.